okay, we're going to get started. Thank you, everyone who's joining to this webinar from the Adizes Institute in collaboration with Upgrad. We're going to start, and I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Juan Jose Flores. I'm a Senior Associate from the Adizes Institute, and I'll be running this event. And we're going to talk about how companies move from entrepreneurship to professional management. And let's review the agenda for today. So what we're doing currently, it's a welcome and introduction. Then we'll talk about the main content of the webinar, which is the topic for how do companies move from entrepreneurship to professional management. Then I will have my colleague Clarice, and she'll be presenting the new Adizes executive program. Then we will go into a Q&A space, and then we will close the program. So let's get started with the content. Thank you, everyone who's already here and people who are currently joining. We're going to start the webinar now. And what are we reviewing today in this webinar, particularly in the main topic? And I would like to do a quick overview of the life cycle model of Adizes. I'm not going to go too much into detail into that model. Then I'll talk about something I like calling the Bermuda Triangle. We're going to look at some data insights. We're going to get some interesting insights from real life cases. We're going to talk about the challenges of two specific stages in the life cycle, which is the Go-Go stage for companies and the Adolescence stage for companies. We are going to also talk about how to avoid what we call the founder's trap, and we'll go into detail to that, and then we'll give some conclusions for today. So let's go and talk about the Adizes corporate life cycle model. And I'm going to do just a quick summary of what happens in each stage. This model is about representing how companies move forward and evolve, and it's not necessarily tied to the age of the organization. It's not necessarily tied to that, nor with the size of the company, and that's very important. It's more about the way the company behaves itself in this model. So the first stage, and as I said, I'll do a quick summary. It's the courtship. In this stage, it's just the entrepreneur selling the idea to him or herself to see if they want to give birth to this organization. The next stage, and you're going to see some deviations in the model as well, which is basically when the company was not successful in that particular stage. So from courtship, usually the organizations go into infancy, which is more of the survival stage of the organization. It's only focused in making sales and make sure that it survives, it gets enough money to move forward to the next stage. And then the next stage is the Go-Go. The Go-Go is the stage where the company feels more empowered and they decide to pursue any opportunities that presents to themselves. And that's why it's called the Go-Go, because the company is going after any opportunity that is coming to them, basically. After that, we find something that is called the Adolescence. And this is, we could even say that it's like the second birth of the organization. Adolescence is where companies go particularly into setting some rules and regulations inside the company. And the main shift that happens between Go-Go and Adolescence, it's two things. First, in Go-Go, the company goes more for any opportunity that comes to them. In Adolescence, companies are actually generating their own opportunities. And the phrase that we typically use to this transition is the organizations go from basically opportunity driven to opportunity driving. Instead of being driven by the opportunities that are being presented to themselves, they basically create their own opportunities. And that's the main shift. The other main shift in the mindset in companies in this particular stage is in Go-Go, companies are more focused into sales as a number, as revenue, basically. And in adolescence, the shift comes into profits. So that's the change in the mentality that happens between these two stages and the transitions. And then we go into the next stage, which is called prime. And that's the ideal stage. We summarize it as the balance between flexibility and control that a company can have. The rest of the model is talking about how companies age. On the left side of the model, you see how companies are growing. And then on the right side, you see the stages in which companies are basically aging. What I want to focus into the area that I'm calling the Bermuda Triangle. And this area, I like calling it that because of the reference to how ships and planes get lost in this space called the Bermuda Triangle in the Caribbean. Because when companies come into the transition into Go-Go and adolescence, it can actually be a very long transition. It can be very difficult for companies to make the shift. And actually, we've seen from experience that many companies struggle to do that transition, to make it happen. And sometimes they go into adolescence or do attempts to go into adolescence, and then they have to go back into Go-Go because they're not successful in that transition. The other danger that is particular to this transition is one of the deviations in the model, which is called the founders or the family trap. And we'll talk about that also during this presentation. So what I want to do is to present some data insights, and these are based on real cases. To give a little more of information, when we help organizations determine where they are located in the life cycle, we do it through a event that we call, it's basically a 2-3 day workshop that we call the SYNDAC. And it's basically a synergistic diagnosis. It's a diagnosis that is done by a representative group of the organization during a 2-day workshop. And what we collect from the groups that participate in these events, it's the pain points. What are the pain points? What are the particular struggles that they are going through into that particular period of time? And using that insight, we help them determine where are they located in this model of the life cycle, and if there are some pathologies or abnormal problems that they could be facing into that particular stage for the life cycle. So basically what I did, I collected information from several companies, and we'll talk about the details. And what I was looking for using some AI tools was what are the big patterns, or what are basically the similarities that these companies present when they are currently in each of the stages. And we'll talk about 3 of them from the model. We'll talk about what is happening, or what are the main challenges for companies that are in Go-Go. Then we'll talk about companies that are in adolescence. And then we'll also talk about the founder's trap, which is the particularity of companies doing this transition from Go-Go and adolescence, and they can fall into that trap. Let's go and look into the data that we collected. So this is a sample out of many workshops that we've done with several companies, and the sample is composed of 55 companies, and they are all family-owned companies. So this is important to mention, because of course the challenges are different for public companies or any other companies. And just to include some additional items or companies into this sample, we also included at least one from each of the categories that we have. So you will see that there are a couple into the category of non-for-profit as well. we have 12 different industries in this sample, and the average revenue, yearly revenue of the companies in this sample is $60 million. But they are ranging from 11 to 300. So that's more or less the average of the yearly revenue of this sample that we will use to understand each of the cases. A little bit more of information. Out of these 55 companies, we have 16 in the category of consumer goods. We have 8 that are into the automotive and manufacturing industry. We have 6 from health and life sciences. We also have 6 that are more in the category of architecture, engineering, and construction. 4 companies related to banking and financial services. 4 companies in the education sector. We have 4 companies into the professional services. We also have 2 non-for-profits or charities as well. And we're including 2 companies from the industry of technology, media, and telecom in general. 1 from retail, 1 from environmental and green, and 1 from logistics and transportation. So these are basically all the categories that we have, and we wanted to make sure that we have at least 1 from each of the different industries. An important thing to mention is that the correlation that we're looking for is not related to the industry, is more related to the stage into the life cycle, which is where we want to find the patterns of the behaviors that the companies have in this, or companies and organizations have in this particular stage. Let's talk about, again, going into the Adizes lifecycle model. We have 17 companies out of the 55 that are in the Go-Go stage. We have 16 that are located in adolescence. 16 are classified as moving in the transition from Go-Go into adolescence. We have 3 that are between adolescence and prime. And then we also have 3 that declared themselves, because this is important. Companies, when they go to this workshop, they come to the conclusion. We help them come to that conclusion, but the group that participates in the workshop is the one that declares we are in this particular stage into the life cycle model. And of course, there are 3 that they recognize we are in the founders or the family trap. So what are the top challenges in Go-Go? As I said, using AI, we put together thousands of pain points, and we came to these summaries to understand what are the correlations or the most mentioned pain points for each for these companies. And this is coming from the group that they came to the conclusion we are in the Go-Go stage. Remember that the Go-Go stage is the stage where the company is pursuing any opportunity that is presenting. The company is growing. The company has been partially successful because they were able to survive the first stage. They were able to be successful with one business or one product in particular, and now they're moving into multiple products and maybe even going into different types of businesses into this stage. So the challenge, they're in numbers, but that doesn't mean that there's a level of importance. It's just the 11 topics that came up when we analyzed this group of thousands of pain points. So the number 1 was outdated technology and underused systems that are limiting the efficiency and adaptability. We regularly see that companies start adopting technology, and when adopt, I mean they buy the technology, but they don't necessarily are using it to its full potential, or they are currently using the system that they were using when they were an infant company. The second point is the non-standard processes and reactive management. And this is very natural in this stage. Processes are not documented, and its management is more about reaction to any challenge that is coming to the organization. The next one is poor communication and coordination, because there are misaligned efforts and errors. When we do diagnosis for these companies, we see that they have a lot of pain points in the planning space. So everything related to planning it's actually one of the main pain points that companies have when they are in this stage. And of course, that's related to the next one, which is the lack of clear goals and planning. And they are just taking any opportunity that is coming. Organizations at this stage, they are not very conscious about what they want to pursue. They actually pursue any opportunity that is presented to the organization. If it makes sense and they have the money to do it, they're probably going to go ahead and pursue that opportunity. The next one is the workforce challenges and that resistance to change. And this is particularly when companies start moving into that transition from Go-Go to adolescence. When there are rules that are coming in, there's a resistance to change and to do things in a different way, or in a processed way, or a more ordered way. The next one is inadequate customer support, and that damages retention in the company. The company is more focused into getting more clients and different clients, and not necessarily about keeping retention of those companies. And of course, there's ineffective marketing here. As we said before, the company is more focused into sales, not necessarily into marketing. And that's shown across many organizations. And it's also something that is coming up lately a lot, is the weak digital presence and how they're not being able to have that formal presence online or in social media. The next one is the supply chain inefficiencies. And of course, this is also coming to the processes and how do we handle everything that we need to be able to deliver our products or services. The poor quality control, which is also creating some legal risks to the companies. And the inefficient financial management. As you can see, part of the common denominator in all of these challenges is the lack of processes. We call it the vitamin A for those who are familiar with the Adizes lingo. We call it the vitamin A, or the vitamin that is related to administration. So there's a lack of this vitamin, and there's a lack of control in general into the organization. And then the last one is the inadequate infrastructure that is constraining the operational effectiveness and growth for companies. Again, this is the patterns. These are the patterns that we were able to identify out of those companies that were more into the Go-Go stage of the life cycle. Now, moving forward into adolescence, and just a quick recap from what I said at the beginning, there's a shift in mindset in the mindset in the organization here. It's moving from sales into or revenue into profits, and it's also moving into being more conscious about pursuing specific opportunities. When we start putting these controls into the organization, the pain comes more from the resistance or from maybe doing or putting too much control into the system, which is also a danger for organizations that are attempting to do the transition from Go-Go into adolescence. And what are the 10 main pain points that were correlated and were the patterns that we found among those into adolescence? It's the unclear strategic direction. When the company moves from Go-Go into adolescence, and this is pretty common, they feel lost. They feel that they have lost the sense of purpose, or even what are we trying to do in this company? Where are we heading? It's as I said at the beginning, it's more of like the second birth of the organization. The organization is actually being reborn, and that's why this feeling of unclear strategic direction is present in these organizations. The other one is the internal misalignment and leadership conflicts. Here, the company starts bringing some talent from the outside, and then we start seeing more fights from the old timers and the newcomers, and that is actually what causes mainly these leadership conflicts. Companies can also show insufficient workforce development, and the high turnover is more related for the talent that is actually leaving the company, because there's no space for growth, there's no space for development. We didn't do properly the development of our personnel to make sure that we have those people who are going to be replacing the leadership so the others can grow. And that's why the turnover is present in this particular stage. Also, operational inefficiencies due to outdated processes. Companies start finding out that their processes, they probably have them documented in the transition. They did that, but now the process is outdated, and also technology could be outdated. The financial stability is also coming from looking at the numbers. Here, we even find organizations that were selling one particular product that they thought it was very profit, and then when they start cracking the numbers, they realize, well, we're actually losing money when we're selling this particular product. Sometimes it's a conscious decision just to make sure that you have the complete portfolio, but sometimes it's actually a surprise for management when they find out about this. There's a subpar customer experience leading to some loss of loyalty of the key customers, and the company feels more rigid because more rules are coming in, and we're trying to figure out what's the right way to do things. And that's part of the natural challenges that a company can have in this particular stage. The weak quality assurance, again, we are realizing that we are not having the right controls, and there's quality challenges. The supply chain inefficiencies, which is a constant between the Go-Go and the Adolescence, but here are more about strained supplier relationships. And the lack of innovation. This is very painful for organizations that go from Go-Go to Adolescence, because when you start pulling these controls or this vitamin A, we start losing what we know as the vitamin E, or the entrepreneurship. And this happens because, of course, we're coming into more formal processes and we're not that flexible. And then, even if I may say, the founder or the CEO is no longer free to pursue any idea that comes to mind. He or she is no longer to do that. And that's why there's a feeling of a lack of innovation, which can actually be real, and a difficulty to adapting to how the market is changing, because the company is more focused internally during this stage. And then the last one, data management obstacles that are impeding decision making. We're not getting the right amount of information to make the right decisions, or we're not feeling comfortable with the amount of information that we are receiving to make decisions. So what's the difference? Let's look at these 7 main topics that are telling us the difference, and that this can actually be helpful if you're listening and you are in an organization. If you have a leadership role in an organization, this can actually help you identify where could my company be if you have not been through this journey in the Adizes process. And the first one is the leadership structure. In Go-Go, it's founder-centric. It's a more informal leadership. In Adolescence, conflicts are coming into the transitions and these potential conflicts because new people are coming into the leadership, and we're getting basically new blood from out of the organization. And we're hiring professional managers in this transition. Into processes and systems, again, in Go-Go, there's no formal process. It's just the way we do it. We know how to do it, and we do it like we've always done it. In Adolescence, there's a struggle with the implementation and integrating new processes. And as we were reviewing, documenting, and making sure that we have everything properly stored and documented. In the innovation, there's even a resistance to formalize, to maintain the flexibility. We want to be flexible in the Go-Go stage. It's all about being flexible, and that's why there's no formality in the innovation process. In Adolescence, there can be this feeling of excessive bureaucracy that it's not allowing us to be as innovative as we used to be before, and that also causes conflicts in this transition. In communication is informal and centralized. when we're a Go-Go. In adolescence, you actually face communication challenges due to the increased complexity. It's natural that also organizations are growing. The more people we have, the more complex it becomes, and people are usually coming into more specific roles and specialized roles, and that makes it more complex to have the right communication. In terms of the market and the customer focus, the Go-Go focuses more on existing networks and basically receiving any opportunity, as we were seeing. And then in adolescence, the organization may lose customer focus even due to the internal restructuring. So it's more looking inwards in this particular stage, because we want to make sure that we have the right foundation. And I have to say, this is normal, and it's okay to do this consciously, because you are preparing and you are building the foundation to be able to go into the next stage, pursuing prime. And two more to finish this comparison. The financial management in Go-Go, it's more about growth than control. In adolescence, it requires sophisticated financial management to be able to handle those restructuring costs that might be needed to make formality more formal, all the financial management processes. And then quality and compliance. Go-Go, it's rapid growth. With the speed of growth, it usually lacks that quality control, and sometimes they neglect it. And in adolescence, there's challenges with maintaining the standards. We're putting now the rules, again, we're coming with these rules, we're coming with these regulations, and we're facing challenges to be able to maintain and keep those amid some other organizational challenges that are happening at the same time. Having said that, how do we move, or what should a founder do to move from a founder owner? And of course, this sometimes I didn't even put the CEO, because one of the typical characteristics of this transition is that in Go-Go, we still have the founder as the CEO or the main person taking the decisions. And when we move into adolescence, professional managers come in, and there could be even someone that it's appointed as a co-CEO, or maybe the founder moves into the president position, into the CEO position, and we have a president. And there are different ways to handle this. It can be someone from within that is actually taking that role, or it can even be someone from the outside. It can come from a different company and join the company into this new role that is emerging. But what should be the focus to move from the Go-Go entrepreneur stage into the adolescence professional management stage? And this is what we've seen companies in this sample are doing to be able to move from Go-Go to adolescence. Number one, it's to develop formal strategies, strategic goals, and proactive planning to guide growth. That's the number one thing, the planning, to make sure what are you actually pursuing at what you want to do. Number two is standardized processes, and make sure that you upgrade technology to improve that efficiency. Embracing technology is important in this process, and using technology with the right level of consciousness and maximize the benefit of the technology. Enhanced communication is another topic very important in this transition, to be able to coordinate and align organizational efforts so that they don't happen in silos. The silo mentality is present in this transition, and organizations fight to get rid of that. Number four would be clarify roles and strengthen leadership to balance control and flexibility. And this is about making sure that we develop the right talent inside of organization, but also that we're able to attract the right talent into the organization. And This is coming to number 5, which is invest in employee training and talent management to be able to boost performance. Companies also launch projects to make sure that they prioritize being customer-centric, and this phrase actually is mentioned by many organizations, and CEOs have this mentality about how do we keep or develop this mentality of a customer-centric organization. That's very commonly present among companies in this transition. Number 7 would be implementing their robust financial planning and make sure that we have the controls, we have clarity of the numbers, we have budgets, we have forecasts, we have all the financial information in place, cost controlling, all these things when the company is trying to formalize and put more of this administration or a vitamin. And then the last one, which should not be lost, is actually foster innovation and adaptability through technology and, of course, innovation again. And what's critical here? It is critical that the innovation or the entrepreneurship spirit of the founder, it makes its formal transition into the organization. The founder has to make sure that the vitamin or the entrepreneurial vitamin that it's driving innovation, it's not something that the founder keeps and makes it formally into the organization. It basically transfers the organization the ability to create new things, to be innovative, and to keep bringing more ideas into the organization. The last topic that I would like to cover is, and what about the founder's trap? What is the founder's trap and what's the challenge? And I always use this picture because that's what I think about when a company is into the founder's trap. It feels like a lion inside a cage. This strength, potential, energy from the CEO or the founder inside the organization, that it's trapped and it's basically in a cage and cannot get out, and it's more focused into maintaining the organization in the right direction, putting all the effort. And sometimes when I have these conversations with owners and founders, I see that there's this even love-hate relationship with the organization, because they love the company that they have founded. It's like a child to most of them, part of their family, but also is the thing that is impeding them to pursue other things. Can be personal goals, or can even be new ideas, new companies, new challenges that they want to pursue, but they can't focus into that because they feel trapped in the company, and they feel that if they leave the company will disappear, which is most of the times actually true when we have an organization that is into the founder's trap or the family trap. What are the main characteristics that we find in companies that are into the founder's trap? Number 1 is centralized decision-making. Decisions are too centralized, little delegation. It's typically a very small group of people that are taking decisions, or sometimes it's only one person. And that person, of course, is the founder. There are undefined roles and career paths. People feel that there's no clear responsibility, no opportunity to grow. They are just receiving instructions and orders, and they follow whatever instruction is coming from the founder. The next one is the high workload and insufficient personnel. The companies that are in this stage, they have imbalance in the number of personnel or the amount of personnel that they have, and the amount of workload that is present in the organization. Turnover and insufficient training. In the other stages, this is also present, but here is it's more painful, and we see it more pronounced with people feeling that they don't have any kind of opportunity to develop, sometimes not even the time to pursue these opportunities on their own, with their own money, with their own time. They don't have time because they are very busy making sure that all the needs are and all the requirements from the leadership are being sufficed. No formal evaluations or policies. There are no formalities and a complete absence of any kind of feedback mechanism or documented policies or rules. The rules are determined by this centralized authority in the organization. And then the last one is the family involvement. And this is not necessarily limited to the founder. That's why it's called the founder's trap or the family trap. And here we see family members taking critical roles into the organization without following a formal process. What we've seen at companies that successfully avoid falling into the founder's trap, very early they start putting rules on what are the things that family members have to do first in order to be able to apply to the opportunity to be part of the organization. They are not going to be the single candidate. They are actually going to compete with other people in the market, and they might not be selected to take the role. And in a founder's trap or a family trap, it's very, very common to find family members involved into specific roles, and they might not be the best person to perform that role. So the company is underperforming. And with that, I have covered the topics that I wanted to make sure that I covered. I wanna thank you all for joining this webinar. Of course, there's a lot more information into the life cycle, and here the recommended book is this book by Dr. Itzhak Adizes, the founder of the Adizes Institute. This book is Managing Corporate Life Cycles, and that's the book that summarizes each one of the stages. And I might even add that I've heard some founders and CEOs that read this book, they relate to a lot of these things, and they actually find a lot of similarities. It's a very well recommended book to read if you are in that leadership position and you'd like to see more about the different stages and potentially identify what are the main challenges for you and in which stage of the life cycle you might be. So here in this screen, I'm showing a QR or the address to my LinkedIn. You can reach out there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that are coming from these topics or any additional recommendations I might be able to provide. I'm more than happy to connect with you, so you can scan the QR code, or you can just take note of the last portion of the URL on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to connect and answer any questions that you might have about this topic.